Hey everyone, I'm Kel, and welcome back to another episode of the CCG Graveyard. Today is long overdue. Today we are talking about the Middle-earth CCG. Not only the very first Lord of the Rings card game, but one of the very first trading card games ever made. This is something that I've wanted to do a video on for a very long time now, as it is basically my favorite dead card game ever made. I love this game. Everything from the art, production value, the gameplay, flavor. As you can see, I like this game a lot, and we're going to spend this video talking about the Middle-earth CCG, everything about it from its inception, talk about all of the card sets, and in a separate video, open up a bunch of these boxes here and actually crack into some packs. I'm really excited for this video, so let's get started. So the Middle-earth CCG was first released in 1995 by Iron Crown Enterprises, or ICE, as you can see here, with the very first set, the Wizards. This is an unlimited edition booster box of that set. A limited edition also exists as well. This one is a French version of the limited edition. We're going to go into the differences between the unlimited and the limited edition a little bit later when we show off some of the cards, but let's continue talking about the sets. So the Wizards was the very first set, followed shortly by the Dragons in 1995. I don't have a sealed box here, but I do have an open booster box that I bought, cracked open many years ago. We can see some of the cards in here. This starter deck does not come with the box. The starter decks are only for two of the sets, the Wizards and another set that we're going to talk about as well. Booster packs of the Dragon set come with these little tiny like rule booklets in every single booster pack, so you're going to end up with a lot of them. You can kind of use them as card dividers. The third set, also released in 1996, is called Dark Minions, and we have a sealed box of this as well right here. And these three sets make up like the first block of the Middle-earth CCG. The next block is called the Lidless Eye, which was released in 1997. I do not have any sealed product from the Lidless Eye block, but this block is really cool because in this set, unlike the very first three sets where you kind of play as the good guys, you play as the Wizards of Middle-earth. In the Lidless Eye, you actually play as a Ring Wraith or Sauron himself, which is very cool. Here we have a Ring Wraith starter structure deck. We'll talk about the structure decks themselves in a little bit as well. So the Lidless Eye was a second basic set. It was a very large, robust set. There was a direct expansion to the Lidless Eye called Against the Shadow, also released in 1997. It does also contain some hero cards in addition to some of the, bad guy cards. The third and final booster set is this one, the White Hand. This set actually released a brand new faction of fallen wizards. Not just Saruman, all of the wizards have fallen in this set, and you can kind of play like evil or corrupted versions of Gandalf, Radagast, and the Blue Wizards. After this set, they released all 10 of the structure decks, featuring all of the Ring Wraiths and all of the Wizards. I have all 10 of those. I'm going to show you those when we go over another product as well. We're going to go dive deep onto some of these later in the video. And the final set was the Balrog set, which was kind of like a two-piece box set where you just kind of bought the box and you got all the cards. The Balrog set is incredibly rare and incredibly expensive, so if you can pick them up for a good deal on eBay, and good luck with that, then I would highly recommend. They usually go for several $100s each. In the videos to follow this one, I will be opening this box of Unlimited, this box of Dark Minions, and this box of the White Hand, just to kind of open it up on the channel and kind of like delve into this awesome 90s goodness. I do also want to note that in addition to the challenge deck, there do exist just straight up starter decks. This is a brick of starter decks from the Wizard set. This one is in French. It is a limited edition one, just because these are some of the only ones I could find, and at a pretty good deal. These come in cases of 10 starter decks. All of these cards are printed by Cardamundi, so if you're familiar with old Magic the Gathering product, a lot of this will look very similar to you. With all of that said, let's start looking at the cards. Here I have a limited edition Wizards starter deck. I do believe there are starter decks of the Lidless Eye in addition to the Wizards. I don't have any starter decks of the Lidless Eye, but let's take a look at this one and we'll kind of show you what it comes with. This one has already been sorted a little bit. I can kind of take a look at what it doesn't look like when it's not sorted, but it does come with a lot of pre-seeded cards. And what I mean by that is you actually get a couple little individually shrink wrapped bits inside of the starter deck, and they come with pre-generated sets of cards, so you always have certain cards you can actually build a functioning deck with the cards. So we have stuff like Saruman here. Unlike a lot of modern card games, they didn't make a lot of the key characters super hyper rare. Saruman is just a pretty basic card that you need to play if you're playing a Saruman deck, and you find them in regular booster packs in addition to these starter decks. We have Alatar here, one of the blue wizards, and then some like, classics like Gimli, Beorn, the dude who turns into a bear, Anborn, and so on. The wizard cards function a little bit different than your character cards. I'm not going to really go into the rules here because the rules are very, very extensive, very complicated. I would highly recommend checking out a video specifically about the rules because it takes a long time to learn. But I'll just show you some of the other kinds of cards that you can expect in the Middle-earth CCG. So here we have some location cards. You actually travel around from location to location in a game, which is really, really cool. It definitely has that sense of like exploration and discovery and a grand open world like you would expect from a Lord of the Rings game. We have Lorien, Grey Havens, Etten Moors. We have stuff like the Iron Hill, Dwarf Hold, Goblin Gate, Beorn's House. Some characters is very, very flavorful, can only be brought in certain locations. So we have Beorn here, and he can only be brought in at his home site of Beorn's home, which is very, very interesting, unless he's in your starting company. And we have Beorn's home here. So the seeded pack had Beorn and his home. So, if you got this, then you could actually, play with it, which is pretty good. You have stuff like Weathertop, Moria with beautiful, beautiful artwork. I haven't mentioned this yet, but the artwork in this game is absolutely fantastic. This game, launched in 1995, and that's before the movie trilogy came out. Really reflects more of an interpretation of the novels, which is fantastic. I love it. And there's some really, really good, well-known artists who do stuff like, so Doors of Night here, art by Melissa Benson, a classic Magic the Gathering artist. There's also Rebecca Gay, Quentin Hoover, right here, Lure of Nature, Quentin Hoover, one of my favorite artists of all time, rest in peace. As well as Angus McBride, very well-known Lord of the Rings artist, Liz Danforth, lots of stuff. So I'm just going to flip through these a little bit quicker just so you can kind of get an idea of what's going on here. So we have the locations. These are hazard cards. You play these against your opponent to create, like hazards on their journey. You don't actually battle them directly. You just kind of like establish the hazards that they have to face. Though I will also note that you can play this game solo, which is a really, really good get. You would kind of build your own hazard deck and then flip cards from the top of the hazard deck to face them as you play and try to, complete whatever journey that you're trying to complete. So yeah, so these are hazard cards. There should also be some asset cards here with the Gates of Mourning. These cards are like events, spells, allies, items, weapons, all that kind of stuff. Some of them are factions that you can, enlist to join your cause and give you more points. This is a man faction Beorning, so if you got your Beorn here and you want to enlist the Beornings faction, he will help you do that. It's very, very flavorful. We have stuff like Elven Cloak, Reforging, which is one of my favorite cards because you can have Reforging and then Narsil. It'll help you get Anduril, the Flame of the West, which is a pretty cool, flavorful thing. You get your Narsil, you reforge it into the really sweet, powerful sword. Here we have one of the many gold rings, which you can actually test in the game to determine what kind of ring it is. So you would play a gold ring, using whatever requirements it is to play a gold ring. If you're on a site that allows you to play a gold ring or a ring type card, then you can test the ring and find out what kind of ring it is. So you can determine if it's the one ring or just a dwarven ring, a magic ring, or a lesser ring. I shouldn't say just a dwarven ring. The dwarven rings are quite powerful, but I think this is, once again, a very, very cool, flavorful mechanic. This game is all about flavor, all about Lord of the Rings and that Middle-earth flavor. So if you're into this kind of stuff, if you're into like big sweeping epics, you're gonna love the Middle-earth CCG. Each starter also comes with a little rules book, and this is like a pretty hefty rule book. Like I said, there's a lot of like minutia here, a lot of rules, a lot of stuff. It's pretty complicated. Once you have an understanding of how to play it, it's not too bad, but there's definitely a learning curve here. And just to kind of show you how these decks are set up, I have a French limited edition starter, and it's basically untouched other than having the shrink wrap taken off of it. So here you have your block of common cards that always comes in at the end. And then you have your seeded bit, lots of just, very seeded cards. Once again, this is a Beorn one, but as you can tell, it is in French. There should be a lot of the same cards that we saw in the English version that I just showed you. And then we have your like uncommon and rare packet here as well. I believe every single one of these starter decks came with 3 rares, and I want to say 10 uncommons, something like that. Here I have my little box of rares. These are rares from all of the sets that I have, various editions and all of that kind of stuff, not including the challenger decks that I will show off in a little bit. Here I have a French version of the One Ring. And I should also mention now that this game is actually still played today. There's actually a pretty dedicated following for the Middle-earth CCG. And then here we have some of the rares from the set. So we have got, like, you got your Frodo, French Frodo, so it's Frodon. We have some stuff like Galva, minor characters, more major characters like Arwen here. And here I'm going to show you the big difference between the editions. So let's set these down. And then here is an Arwen from the limited edition Wizard set. And then here is an Arwen from the unlimited edition Wizard set. You can see that the border is blue instead of black. That's how you can tell the difference between the unlimited and the limited edition. Honestly, the black just looks a lot nicer and snazzier, but the blue border cards aren't too bad and they're a lot easier to get your hands on. So let's show off some more of these cards here, and then we're going to show off all of the challenger decks, and I'm going to show you another product as well. So we've got stuff like Galadriel. Absolutely beautiful artwork. We got some Bilbo action. Once again, you can see the difference between the limited and the unlimited. We got some Haldum, Círdan the Shipwright, or Círdan the Shipwright. Pretty good card, actually, with your excellent Quentin Hoover artwork. We got some Barad-dûrs. Once again, differences between the editions, and we're gonna flip through these pretty quickly. Dol Guldur. We got the Vale of Eric, Dunharrow. Just really, really cool, iconic Minas Morgul, iconic locations from Lord of the Rings. We have cards like the Nazgul are abroad. So the Nazgul and the Ring Wraiths are actually appearing as cards and threats before they were actually like playable as, you know, a player card rather than just as a hazard for your opponent to face. So we have the Nazgul are abroad, and then we have, you know, a Ring Wraith like Uvatha the Horseman. And once again, you got the differences between the limited and the unlimited. And all the ring wraiths were named here, which is pretty cool. So we have Andunafel. We have, oh my god, I don't know how to pronounce this guy names. It's like Hormurath of Deer, Indur. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. Then we have some dragons. I really like Agburanar. We have Bale of Ithelstone. This is kind of like an anti-Palantir card. There's some Palantir cards that let you do shenanigans, and this is kind of like an anti-Palantir card, which is pretty good. It's got some failed turtles, some Morgul knives. This is a traitor card. Lots of other hazards like clouds, the most hazardous of all things. Well, actually, something truly hazardous like the Balrog of Moria. Yeah, just really, really sweet stuff. Eye of Sauron, the Precious, Pukelman. So all of this stuff is from the Wizard set, including this Anduril, the Flame of the West, that I mentioned before, that you can play that reforging card. You can play your Narsil, and then you can actually forge Anduril, which is really, really sweet. We also have some of the Dwarven rings here, the Arkenstone, which is pretty sweet. Those Palantirs that I was talking about, Palantirs of Osgiliath, Amonsul, Army of the Dead. You know how Aragorn goes in and recruits his Army of the Dead? You can do that in this game, and it's worth 6 points, which is a really big deal, honestly. 6 points is a lot. And we have some rings here. These are kind of like one-shot rings to help pump up like your Gandalf or your Galadriel, which is very, very cool. And let's flip through these a little bit quicker. There's some other very, very cool artwork here, you know, with Gandalf versus the Balrog. So this card here, the Gollum's Fate, is a very interesting card. So typically you win the game by just amassing a lot of points, but you can also identify gold rings, find the one ring, and then dunk it in Mount Doom with a card like Gollum's Fate here. So it says, unique, only playable if the One Ring and Gollum are both at Mount Doom during the sight phase. Gollum is an uncommon card, just so you know. And it says, the One Ring is destroyed and its bearer's player wins. Really, really cool. So you can actually like take the ring to Mount Doom, dunk it in the fire, and win the game. Just really, really cool, flavorful stuff. Or you can kind of play different strategies, gathering factions, amassing power, gathering items, completing quests. And by quests, I mean tasks that award you additional points at the end of the game, that kind of stuff. Once again, I love this game. It's so, so flavorful. It's not kind of like your casual play for 10 minutes kind of game. This is a buckle down for an hour and a half kind of game. Got your secret dwarven entrance with beautiful artwork. Love all this stuff. Lucky search, finding that one ring in the cave. Okay, so I know I've dragged on that quite a bit. Let's go through these pretty quick. So we have 2 other sets here. This stack is cards from the White Hand set. What's very interesting about the White Hand packs is that each pack gives you 2 rares, which is pretty uncommon for card games. Even today, you usually only get 1 rare per pack. And then these are the rares that I got from my box of the Dragon set. So here we have stuff like Framson, a legendary Dragon Slayer, pretty cool card. Things like Emerald of the Mariner, a unique card, and it's a horde item, which means it can only be found in very specific situations. Unique weapons like the Worm's Bane that has additional prowess versus dragons. And speaking of which, we do have some dragons in here. We have this beautiful Nenselde, the Winglet. Not sure exactly how to pronounce that, but this is an ally card, so you can play this card and kind of like pump up your team for whatever effects that it has. Stuff like King Under the Mountain, if you're doing like a dwarf style deck to amass some points here. Once again, 5 points is quite a lot because some returned exiles. And we have stuff like Shadow of Mordor here, which is a permanent event that makes it harder for your opponents to travel. Basically, every time they travel, you can play more hazards, which is pretty good. The dragons are pretty interesting. So there's the dragons themselves. So here we have Scatha. Then you have Scatha at home, and there's also Scatha a Hunt. They're all, hazard cards, but they're all played a little bit differently. Like I said, there's a lot of nuance in this game. Here we have a Abugurnar at home. You saw I had the Abugurnar Dragon Rare in the Wizard set. This one comes in the Dragon set. All these dragons can only be played at certain locations. So like this dragon here is a more aquatic dragon, and it has to be played on coastal areas. Specifically, it has to be at the Isle of Uland, which is pretty interesting. And I'm going to go over these a little bit quicker. This one's not all that interesting. Like I said, lots of dragony stuff here. And then we also have your White Hand cards. And here we have some of the like bad guy hero cards, or your villain cards, or whatever you want to call them. Basically, these are evil men, orcs, goblins, all that kind of stuff that accompany your fallen wizard or your ring wraith into battle. So we have like Ugluk here. He's unique. He's an Uruk-hai leader, all that kind of stuff. We also have some, very, very specific wizardy and fallen wizard cards like Cast from the Order, Mask Torn. These are actually anti-wizard and fallen wizard cards, if I remember right. What I really like about this set is the fallen wizard cards. I think the fallen wizard cards are incredibly cool, and just take a look at the artwork on some of these. The Fiery Blade. Who is this? Steve Otis. Man, this card is awesome. Super, super cool. It pumps up your Ring Wraith, which is very, very cool. You can play this on your Ring Wraith or a Ring Wraith follower. But yeah, this card is awesome. And one of the things I really like about this kind of stuff is, since it's pre-movies, it has alternate depictions and interpretations of characters. So we have the Witch King of Angmar here with his flaming sword, but he looks entirely different than how he appears in the movies. Very, very cool stuff here. I know I keep saying that, but man, I love this game. Got some wild horses. Gonna highly resist the urge to start singing Wild Horses by the Rolling Stones. Got the White Council, the White Wizard, which is very cool flavor here. If I remember right, you basically make one of your wizards into the White Wizard. What's this? It says unique, playable on a wizard with sacrifice of form, +2 to his direct influence, +1 to his corruption checks. Discard if Saruman is in play as an opposing wizard. That's so cool. So you basically make your wizard into the White Wizard, but you can't really play it if your opponent is already Saruman, the White Wizard. These cards here, with this kind of unique border that we haven't seen before, these ones are the Fallen Wizard cards. So we have stuff like Keys of Orthanc, Keys to the White Towers. This is one of my favorite cards, a new Ring Lord. So this is a new alternate victory condition where you can make your Fallen Wizard into basically the next Lord of the Rings. You make him the Lord of the One Ring, which is super, super cool. Like it says on the first line here, you can only play this card if your Fallen Wizard has the One Ring at one of your Wizard Havens. You probably don't know what any of that stuff means if you're, very new to this game, but you don't really need to know. That's just all the flavor right there. It's so cool. Then there's also cards that like pump up some of your wizards, items for your wizards. There's like, gloves of Radagast. Radagast becomes like this crazy shape-shifting, monster guy. And then you have stuff like the White Hand here, which is very, very flavorful, like a lot of the other things that I've mentioned. 6 points. 6 points is a lot. So, you can tell this is going to be a very involved card. It says Saruman specific, Playable on Saruman if he has the following in play: at least 12 stage points, so if he's gotten, a lot of areas, at least 3 factions, so if he's recruited enough factions, enough minions, a strident spawn, and Saruman's machinery. So basically this is Saruman assembling his power, creating the white hand, which is super cool, super flavorful. One of the ways you can, build your deck, build it around like the white hand and try to, complete the Saruman mission. There's other cards like this, the Great Hunt, which is Alatar specific. We got some Palando specific. Palando is the other blue wizard. Await the Onset, I think this is a Gandalf one. Here's that Saruman's machinery that the White Hand mentioned. And that's that for the cards themselves, just kind of giving you a taste of what the cards look like, the art, the kind of flavor there, all that really cool stuff, especially if you are a Lord of the Rings fan. I'm going to show you a couple more things before we end the video. These are the Ring Wraith and Wizard Challenge decks. Like I said, they made 10 of these total, 5 of each, 5 Wizards, 5 Ring Wraiths. Here are some of the ones that I have that are sealed, well, sort of sealed. We have these ones that are actually fully sealed here, but I'm going to show you the ones that I have that are opened. So this behemoth is the Middle-earth CCG gift set. You can see this thing has had better days. This is actually a recent acquisition of mine. I picked it up for a very good deal. It was this gift set that also included all 10 of the challenge decks. Each challenge deck, if you can find it on eBay, usually retails for about $20, and I picked up this entire thing for less than 100. I got an incredibly good deal here. So the gift set itself actually comes with this really, really nice rules book. It's just a very large rules book. I'm pretty sure it's very close to the same rule book I showed you, that little tiny one that came in the starter deck. But it's bigger and easier to read. So I like that a lot. This is a tip book that kind of just runs you through, basic play of the game. It runs you through like a mock game, which is also pretty cool, pretty nice. These are pretty expensive to pick up though. I think the gift boxes, even an empty gift box, still runs around $100 these days. And this is a card list that just has a list of all the cards in the first 3 sets. So it has Dark Minions, Dragons, and the Wizards. This is a map of Middle-earth for the game and all of the locations and regions, which is actually very, very useful. There are region cards that come in the booster packs, and you will see these when we open up the unlimited booster packs. There are little cards that are like these regions, but I find something like this is a lot easier. There's a couple different rule sets for traveling where you have to, make sure you travel from the right regions to the right regions, and there's other rules where you can just kind of like fudge it a little bit. This game is basically as, in-depth as you want it to be. And there's obviously your, key locations here. So we have got, Lorien, we got the Lonely Mountain, we have Mordor, and Mount Doom. We have the Shire, Bag End, all that kind of good stuff. Rivendell's probably over here somewhere if I had to guess. Oh yeah, there it is. It's actually very hard to see and read, but got Rivendell right there. All your classic Lord of the Rings locations. And that's what I mean by this game being like very epic. I mean, it is. You travel across the entire world. Not like the LCG where you just have a set path. You can go wherever you want. You can kind of like make your own path. So here are all 10 of the challenge decks, all the Wizard challenge decks, all of the Ring Wraith challenge decks, and then an extra one that I picked up that's kind of not complete. I got this one for only $8 because it wasn't complete. It was missing a couple cards. The gift box itself actually came with a couple dice, which is very, very cool. They have the Eye of Sauron here. I think it only comes with a set of dice and one of each of these little Hobbit figurines that you can actually put these on your map and kind of like show where you are, which is actually really, really cool. You don't need these to play the game, but it is very useful. You do need dice to play the game. It's not all about dice, but dice rolling is a major mechanic. I also have some extra ones just because, I picked up some extra ones. I do want to show you some of these decks though, and I kind of want to show you like the difference between these cards and regular cards because there's a slight difference. So for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to show you some very, very iconic character decks. So this is Gandalf and the Witch King. So let's show off the Gandalf deck first here. These are full decks. I believe they have like 120 cards, 110 cards. So yeah, full decks with a sideboard, everything you would need to play right from the get-go. This is your Gandalf card. It has full play sets of all the cards that need full play sets. Doesn't have a whole lot of rares in here, I will note, but it does have the cards labeled for the decks. What I mean by that is this E means it comes from this Gandalf deck. So every card in here should have an E in it. The E with the white background and the black letter, that means it's a main deck card. If it has a black background and a white letter, it means it is a sideboard card. And these are the best way to start playing this game. If you wanted to play this game, if you saw this video and you're like, hey, that looks really cool, I want to play that game, I would highly recommend just picking up a couple of the challenger decks. Especially because you can play this game, like I said, by yourself. You can just buy this Gandalf deck and then just play it by yourself and have fun. Don't need anyone else to have to play with you. But you could also, you know, maybe buy the Gandalf deck and the Witch King deck here and play with a friend. You'll also note that the cards here are silver bordered instead of being black bordered or blue bordered. So let's kind of find a card that we saw before. So here is Arwen, and I've gone ahead and pulled the other Arwens just so we can have this all side by side so you can see the difference between them. So you have your limited edition black bordered Arwen, unlimited edition blue bordered Arwen, and then the silver bordered challenge deck Arwen that you can see is from the E deck, which is the Gandalf deck. Other than that, identical cards. So these, unless you're a collector, doesn't really matter if you have this one already. They're all functionally the exact same card. Each of these decks is heavily themed, so this is all about Aragorn and Arwen traveling to Minas Tirith and making Aragorn the king, which is, once again, very, very cool and in line with the stories. Oh, there's Narsil that I mentioned. This deck does not have Reforging and Anduril. I think that's something you could maybe add to the deck if you wanted to go with that kind of route. It does have Glamdring though. Pretty sweet. Glamdring is Gandalf's sword. A beautiful artwork here from Rebecca Gay, classic Magic the Gathering artist. Just a fantastic artist in general. Come on, we gotta get the Return of the King somewhere in here. We got some Boromir action. I'm not sure if he has any. I was gonna make a joke about him dying. I don't think he has any like death mechanics, but he is very corruptible. There we go. Got Return of the King. Now that we've gone over the Gandalf deck, let's take a look at the Witch King deck here. One of my personal favorites. As you can see, the Ringwraith cards have a significantly different look than the Wizard cards, which is expected. This trend actually continues on to most of their other cards. So here we have one of their follower type cards, one of the villains as opposed to a hero with an orc captain here. We have an ill-favored fellow. Most of these are going to be orcs, goblins, you know, evil humans. We got this horseman in the night. Pretty cool card, honestly. Orc veteran, all that kind of stuff here. We have some items here. The Blazon of the Eye. You can see the item also looks different, has a different border. They're actually pretty close looking, whereas the Blazon of the Eye has a slightly lighter colored, you know, bluish purple here. So they're pretty distinguishable from the good guy cards or from the wizard cards. So we're going to go over these pretty quickly. Here we have more of the items for the Ringwraiths. Some of the cards here are going to be very similar to other wizard cards, like here the Palantir of Minas Tirith. You know, we saw a Palantir earlier. I believe we actually saw a Palantir of Minas Tirith before. We saw the wizard version of it. This one is the Ringwraith version of that card. We do have some cards that are going to be literally the same that you can run in your Ringwraith deck, like the Hazards. The Hazards are exactly the same. They're kind of one-to-one. You can run your Hazards in either deck. You can run them in your Wizard deck. You can run them in your Ringwraith deck. And if we continue on, we can see some of the other stuff here, like Lure of Nature. This is a card that we saw while we were looking at one of these starter decks from the Wizards set, which is pretty cool. You know, there are reprints from all of the sets in the challenge decks. Here are some of the locations. We got your classic, you know, Barad-dûr. We have Cairn Dûm. These are the Ringwraith specific locations. You know, these are not the ones that you would include in your Wizard deck, for example. Dol Guldur, Minas Morgul, all this really cool iconic areas. Even Minas Tirith, this is the Ringwraith version of Minas Tirith. You would not play with the other version, you would play with this version. We got Moria, we have Shelob's Lair, you know, all the classic locations. And then we also have the sideboard. We also have this little booklet here that teaches you how to play. I think it's very good, very interesting. Lots of stuff here. Does tell you, you know, the differences between like Ringwraith cards, how to play with your Ringwraith deck. It also tells you how to play with very specific decks here. So for example, here we have the Stewards of Gondor deck. This is the Saruman challenge deck, and it says, with Saruman's deck, Glorfindel and a group of hobbits travel into the civilized confines of Gondor, south of the White Mountains, to rally mannish factions against Sauron's host. The deck relies heavily on attack avoidance. The hazard mix is pure Orc Troll strategy. Yeah, pretty interesting. And it does that for every single one of the decks. And every one of the challenge decks comes with one of these little booklets. I did lay out all the challenge decks here just in case you wanted to take a look at them, in their entirety rather than a top-down view. So we have stuff like, the Witch King here. We have Gandalf that we saw, if we can get in focus. We have Saruman. This is Alatar, one of the blue wizards. This is Palando, one of the blue wizards. I'm pretty sure this deck is a dwarf focused deck. So if you like your Thorin, if you like your Feely Keeleys, that's in that deck. We have Radagast the Brown. This is Dwar the Ringwraith. This one is Andufanel? No, it's Indir. This is Indir the Ringwraith even. This one is Hormurath. And finally, this one is Andufanel the Ringwraith. I also want to mention before we go that I do want to make a video on the Decipher Lord of the Rings TCG that came out after ICE lost the rights to the Lord of the Rings shortly before the movies came out. The Decipher TCG actually has screen caps from the movies instead of the artwork here. I will always like the artwork more, but I hear that the Lord of the Rings TCG from Decipher is actually a really good game, so I'm really eager to check that out. Expect a few CCG graveyards on that in the future after all of these ones are done. Speaking of which, stay tuned for booster box openings of the White Hand, the Dark Minion set we got right here, and of course, the Unlimited Wizards set. We're going to kind of start this off with the Unlimited Wizards booster box opening and then do it in chronological order, going with the Dark Minions and then finally the White Hand. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Like, comment, subscribe. Maybe check out my Patreon if you want to support me and help me do more videos like this. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time for some more card game content.